Welcome back into the Tim Crowley Show. Really excited about today's guest as we welcome on 2008 World Series champion and multi-year big leaguer for over a decade pitching in the show. Joe Blanton joins the show. Joe, thanks for coming on to share your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So for you, obviously, there's a lot of different passions that we're going to talk about that you've had in this interview. But starting with baseball, obviously that's the point of kind of where your journey starts. Was baseball always the plan for you growing up, and kind of where did you start to see that this was going to be your professional track?
I think it was always the plan. I mean, at what age? I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I feel like I went through stages. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky. I probably wasn't the best player in my town and I think this is a lesson for kids out there. 10, 11, 12 years old, I probably wasn't. But I kind of kept progressing, kept working. Obviously grew into my body a little bit more, which helped. And I would say for me, by the time I hit around like 16 or so, there started to be a little bit of separator from other people. And then I just started noticing when I was talking about like steps, I started noticing that colleges were starting to be interested around, getting asked to play with other teams when I was around like 16, 17, college start becoming a thing and you get interest there. And then 18, my senior year, I started getting recruited by some scouts, but decided to go to college. And then obviously you get drafted and everything kind of blows up from there and goes. I mean, it was always the dream. It was always the goal, but, to what extent, like I said, it was always just kind of little steps for me. I didn't have this, plan at 16 years old. I think it's different now. The scope of athletes, what they do now, it's by the time they're 14, 15, whatever it is, they're already on a workout regimen. They're already on this, they're on that. And their goal is to get to the big leagues. That was my goal, but their life wasn't centered around that. So I just think it's a different time now where people's, obviously some it works and some it doesn't. So that was kind of my transition and my kind of path to get there.
I'm glad you brought on that point, just knowing that for baseball, sure, but across college athletics, the realm is so different now with the portal and NIL and everything that goes into it. Take me back. What were weekends like playing 2000s ball in the SEC when you were able to stay home in Kentucky, and kind of what were those weekends like, getting out to go play with the guys and obviously build your craft on the mound?
Yeah, I mean, SEC balls, I think, I don't follow college baseball as much anymore, but I think SEC is just, it's kind of the cream of the crop. It's at the top. It has its haters every year where you talk about the College World Series, 8 teams getting in, and usually about half of them are SEC teams. And I think that's obviously they have to work their way through regionals and everything to get there. So I think that just shows you kind of what competition you're facing every weekend throughout the season. For me, that was obviously staying in state was nice. I grew up Kentucky basketball fan. Fell a little bit short past couple of years, but hope to turn that around. Anyways, but that was obviously a big dream of mine to play in Kentucky, and then add on playing in the SEC. That's really what I wanted, is to face the best competition every weekend, and was able to do that.
What did it mean to you a couple of years back now to be able to reflect on that time there, pitching for a team in your home state and being named to SEC legend status a few years ago for your work down there in the early 2000s?
Yeah, that was super special. I got to take my son with me out on the field. Kind of him getting to see the SEC tournament was kind of cool. I mean, we're out in California, so I think he finally got a glimpse of like kind of what the SEC's like, and that was nice for him to see. And also for me, it was pretty cool because it was 4 people at the same time. One was Frank Thomas, who was my teammate. The other was Todd Walker, who was also my teammate. Both with the A's actually. So it was that was actually really cool to have former major league teammates be a part of that as well, and get to see those guys again.
You moved past Kentucky and obviously move into a situation in a really cool time with the A's back at that point in time in the 2000s. What were some of the emotions of getting drafted by them as high as you were? And did you feel like there was a transition in those years kind of coming up through the minors where something really started to click and understand that you were going to be able to be a mainstay in a lot of big league rotations for a long time.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of a whirlwind, a few months, year roughly time. So after my sophomore year, I got to go to the Cape. I had been a reliever in college my first 2 years. I had maybe had a couple spot starts here and there, but for the most part, was thrown out of the bullpen in just kind of different roles. I was kind of all over the place. Spot started some. I would long relieve some. I think I maybe closed a couple times. Was just kind of all over the board in the way I threw. And then going to the Cape, I got a chance to, for the first time since high school, to really just get on a normal starting routine, and obviously different. It's kind of mirrors more of that pro ball lifestyle. You're playing every day. You're around the same guys. It's a looser structure. Everything is a little bit more on your own. Where college, everything is driven. Like, this is your schedule, and you have to be there, and you have to do this. Where when you show up there, it's like the guys that want to go work, and the guys that don't, don't. And so you kind of see that separator. And going back to college, got the first time to start in college on a regular routine. Really took advantage of it, and put myself in a good position to be drafted high. And for me, I felt like it worked out great being part of the A's. They're obviously known to kind of trade players, move players in and out rather quickly. They don't really sign free agents. So they were very good at developing the minor leaguers that they get and the minor leaguers that they draft, and they put a lot of stock into it. And I think that was great. And just to be around guys that's their job is to develop young talent and what they're known for. For me, I just soaked it all in. Had lots of talks with the different pitching coordinators and pitching coaches, and it was different then than it is now. A lot about they have terms for tunneling now, and we used to call it pitching off your fastball and making pitches look like your other pitches, so one doesn't look an outlier, and sequencing pitches. And there wasn't as many scouting reports then. It was more about what you see. And for me, it was just soaking it all in, and also just kind of the first time to really dive in and work on, like you said, your craft, repeating mechanics daily. You're on such a consistent schedule, where college for then, that time anyways, it was consistent, but not as consistent and as often. Obviously, you're out there every day grinding out. That's your one. There's no school anymore coming from college. There's nothing of that. That's your like main goal. And there's kind of like nothing else. And you can spend as much or as little time as you want to do it. And, for me, like I said, I tried to suck it all in mentally and physically and try to take it as far as I could. And luckily was able to take it pretty far.
There's a lot more to dive into regarding your big league career, but I do have to ask about the Cape. Obviously, again, that was where a lot of my baseball upbringing was, growing up in Massachusetts, working there as an intern in the summer with Katuitt. Take me through your time there. Like, what stood out to you, whether it was, the growth on the field and getting to play with really good college players from around the country, and, what were like some of your favorite food stops when you're on the Cape? Like, what were you eating during the day before you're hitting the mound?
I don't remember what I was eating. Actually just went back. I just went back to the Cape last summer, and kind of get there. Obviously, redove in a lot of lobster rolls, lobster, seafood, chowder, things like that. The Cape was so long ago. I have no idea. You're talking. This was. I hate dating myself, but I was there in the summer of 2001. So you're 25 years ago, coming up on this summer. I just remember being an awesome time and being around. Like I said, the SEC was great, but a lot of times in the SEC, and I had this conversation with somebody the other day. For us, anyways, it was another guy playing college. He said their like midweek schedule was harder than their in conference. He was the guy who went to Pepperdine. Their in conference schedule was weaker than their out of conference schedule because just kind of the level they play. And I was like, oh, we had to kind of do the opposite. Ours had to be midweek was a little softer schedule where because every weekend was just was a complete grind to get through a 3-game series. But just also being around, you get played with guys from Cal, Florida State, all the different conferences all over the country, and just kind of talk to them and see how they go about it. And it's not that when you're in college you play with players that don't have the aspirations of going on and getting drafted, but I feel like the players that go to the Cape, like that is that stepping stone to getting drafted to being the next. So you're around a lot of other people that are kind of headed on the same path you're on.
It's always great to hear Cape stories from people that were there, just knowing the environment that it's about. We come back to your big league career. Obviously, you get up to the bigs in Oakland, and it's a talented rotation. You're able to kind of get your feet going there, go on some playoff runs. Take me to 2008, because I think this is a really important conversation, just for the point of your career, but I think in general it's always so fascinating to hear this part for players. Obviously, you were traded a little bit before the deadline. I think it was about 2 weeks before what ended up being one of the crazier deadlines we've had with Manny and CeCe Sabathia going a bunch of different places. You go to the Phillies about 2 weeks before that. Just take me through what that sort of transition's like for a player midseason when you're dealt at that point. In your case, going all the way coast to coast, what goes into that off the field for you just to make sure you have that stuff taken care of, but then find your way to assimilate into a new clubhouse. And in that sense, in that year, a really intense pennant race too.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like I said, I was drafted by the A's. Obviously, came up with them. Had spent the first 3.5 years there. Billy was awesome in Oakland, and all the coaches and everybody I had. But obviously, for me, the time of the trade worked out pretty well. So hindsight looking back, but while you're doing it, it kind of when you're playing with the A's, that's kind of at a certain point becomes a norm of hearing your name in the trade rumors, especially back then. So it had been a year or so with the trade rumors, and I think around that time, I think Swisher got traded. And some of these I can't remember if they were all right before me, right after Rich Harden had got dealt, Dan Heron had got dealt, Houston Street. Like I said, Swisher, myself, there maybe was a couple of all of us that kind of came up together, started going. Like I said, there was at least 3 or 4 before me, maybe a couple after. So you kind of have an idea it's coming. So it's not real shocking, maybe where some other organizations like, oh, what happened? Where'd that come from? Kind of know it's coming. And then when I arrive, couldn't have been a better clubhouse to be a part of. The guys were just awesome. Opening, welcoming. I never got the sense it was, anything other than, hey, we're here to win and just jump on board and see how we do it. And, that was a kind of a welcoming thing. And then obviously we were able to push through and get it done.
Take me through Game 4. What if anything felt different about your routine that day, knowing that it's the stage or trying to stay consistent. Obviously, a start that may get overlooked for something you did with your bat later, but just take me through the day and kind of how much that memory means to you from pitching into that game to obviously a pretty famous swing in the middle innings against Edwin Jackson.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it was obviously a special moment. But when you start at the beginning, I mean, for me, I'd had a small taste of the playoffs in 2006 with the A's. We beat the Twins in the first round. I didn't pitch a lot. I think I maybe had a little bit of bullpen, but I didn't start that series or either series. And so this is kind of the first go. But obviously, we had the Milwaukee series. Before that, we had the Dodger series before that. So by the time you get to the World Series, you start learning that it's another game. For me, anyways, I didn't try to treat it as anything special. Obviously, the mental focus it's going to be different than it is in a random game in June or July or August, whatever it is, when you're kind of grinding through the dog days or whatever whatever it may be. But because any pitch in a playoff series can make or break a game, and that's the kind of feel you get. So for me, the more that I could treat it just like a regular start, keep the regular routine, not do anything different, makes it a little bit more of like, all right, we're just inside the lines now, and this is another game. Obviously, once you get to the World Series, outside the lines is a whole different level. The amount of media, TV, you know, fans, just everything going on is so much more. So it's actually kind of, for me, it was always a little bit of a relief to get between the lines and get some normalcy. You know, whether it was a day off and you got to go do your bullpen work or whatever it is. So when you got to kind of do that, it was actually relieving, to be able to get just in the normal part of a game again.
When you took that swing, and obviously, you know, for now, especially now with universal DH, it's something we may not get to see as much anymore. Pitchers homering in the World Series. Philly's such a unique playoff crowd, and it feels like the last few years when they got on runs in 22 and 23, people started to kind of see that again. That's a moment that has to blow the roof off of Citizens Bank Park. Like, as you make contact with that, first of all, did you know it was going out? And second, like, do you kind of black out like everything that's going on around you, knowing how loud that place gets in moments like that, or were you kind of soaking that in as you went around the bases?
It is a little bit of a blackout moment. There's not really much soaking it in. You know, that for me, I can't coming up with the A's like we talked about was an American League team, so we did not hit in the minor leagues. Where, you know, if you come up with a National League team, you do get some at bats in the minor leagues. So for me, I think I maybe had a few interleague at bats with the A's, whereas mostly just if I'm honest, they said, you guys don't hit. We want you to really just stand there. Maybe you'll walk or strike out. Like, otherwise you're getting a bunt down. Like, we didn't practice hitting. There wasn't anything. So you talk about, I graduated high school in 1999, and then that was 2008. So you're talking a 9-year gap of really not getting any at bats. And, you know, just to be clear, you know, the major league pitching is a little bit different than high school pitching in Kentucky. I would say so, especially back then, and so it was a little bit of a shock at first when you start hitting, but you know, you try to make yourself competitive. You know, you learn quick that's a National League. It was different rules. You know, it's not. You know, there are times like if you can't handle the bat and get a bunt down, you might get pulled out. You know, me, I wanted to throw as many innings as possible, and that was kind of my thing that I did, and you know. If a situation came up where you had to be pinch hit for it because you couldn't get a runner over or handle the bat decent. So you wanted to just make yourself adequate enough and also, you know, catch yourself another run. It was also a way to try to help yourself, takes you back to the high school days when maybe obviously you're not the 4-hole anymore like you were then, but, you know, if you have 2 outs and a, you know, runner on second or third and you're able to get a ground ball through the infield or something to give yourself a run, it, you know, really helps yourself out. So it's other than pitching, you kind of feel a whole part of the game again. So it was actually fun to be a part of. And yeah, it's anymore. Yeah, there's not a big chance of it happening. Currently, we have one person that could do it. Other than that, and you know, he's got a pretty good chance. I would say.
Yeah, I would like. Does that make it more special now, knowing that, with the exception of Shohei, like that's probably not going to happen ever again, barring a rule change or you know emergency 16, 18 inning, which obviously we've had a few games like that last year. Does it mean more knowing that with the exception of arguably the greatest player of his generation doing it because of, you know, a unicorn situation, that, you know, what you got to do in '08 probably doesn't really happen anymore?
Yeah, it's different on one side. You know, you could set and say, you know, it feels like a safe record because it's other than something weird's not going to happen. But with that kind of person having the opportunity, it doesn't feel too safe of a record because, you know, he's definitely special, which we have seen year in and year out. And you know, on one hand, you know, you almost kind of want that, you know, like I said, there is a, you know, if you want to talk about being the last person for years and years, yeah, it's a safe way to feel. But there's also a part of me that, you know, misses seeing, you know, that opportunity of players to get to do it, you know, versus like, oh, you know, setting a record, nobody else can even try again. So it is kind of nice seeing at least somebody have a chance to be able to do it.
when you guys win it a few days later, and obviously after a really weird scenario with the
Yeah.
suspension and the rain, and then coming back a few days later, finishing the game, are there stories that stand out to you that you really enjoyed about the celebration? I know, like in the World Series film, there's the shot of Jamie Moyer with the rubber in the locker room after the game. What kind of stories stand out to you? Whether it's the aftermath at the park, in the clubhouse, the parade in Philly, what stands out to you from kind of championship stories that stay with you now all these years later?
Oh God, there's definitely a few mental clips, if you will. Um, Obviously, I kind of remember sitting on the bench with the other starters, uh, when it was right there, that it was actually kind of the first time that me personally, I had any nerves at all, because it was right there. Once the last hitter comes up and there's two strikes, it's like holy shit! At any moment, like a pop up, a rollover, and then obviously it goes to two strikes. We're like, oh shit, we're one pitch away. Like it is right here. I'm actually kind of getting chills right now thinking about it. And then it happens. You kind of get this little blackout moment where I don't really remember running on the field, and then all of a sudden you're in a pile, and there's all this stuff happening on the field to where you kind of don't remember. Obviously the celebration, and for me, the next kind of part you really remember is when everybody kind of clears out of the clubhouse, and it kind of settles down. All the players are still in there. Some are starting to, shower up. Some are sitting around and just, was sitting around with a couple of guys and maybe smoking a cigar and sharing a drink of whatever it was at the time. And, just kind of reflecting back and enjoy that moment. And then for right after that, shower up, you leave, and getting in the car, and all my family in the car, and then you're driving out. I remember pulling out of the parking lot, and just people were like jumping on top of the car, and you couldn't even pull out of the parking lot. They were just covered, and then you get away. I remember going to celebrate with the guys, kind of keeping the party going, and enjoying that as well. And obviously the parade. Then there's like a couple days of probably rest, blackout, whatever. And then, the parade was obviously amazing. Just a sea of people every turn we took, going down Broad Street, and just seeing how much joy they got out of it, and how much they enjoyed celebrating, was a really, really cool moment.
Did that 2 year run just sort of feel at times like this group was unstoppable, going to the World Series 2 years in a row, having the starting pitching that you guys had, the thump in the lineup? When you're going out on the field that day, whether it's your start days or watching these guys, on your off days in the dugout, like how unstoppable did that 2 year stretch feel at times for teams that won, a pair of pennants in a row?
Definitely. And, the front office, Pat Gillick and Ruben Amaro, they did a great job of continuing to add pieces. Obviously, we never got to our ultimate goal again. I mean, we got to the World Series, but weren't able to win one. But we felt like every year we stepped on the field, we were a better team than the last. We felt like 9 was better than 8, 10 was better than 9, 11 was better than 10. So we always felt like we were the favorites going in, or at least top 2 or 3. And, that's where you really want to be at the end of the day, is in that conversation, with the playoff structure now, even more so now. And even then, you got all the wild cards and so many other factors that come into winning. It makes it extremely hard to win. It's not always the best team wins. Sometimes who's the hottest, who's the healthiest. There's so many factors that go into it. But, we really felt like every year we had a chance. And I know for me personally, I think it started a lot with our lineup. Our lineup was so powerful. I mean, I could run through 1 through 9 of almost every year. And, you're talking silver sluggers and MVPs and all-stars and you name it. For me as a starter, it really gave you the ability to kind of go out. If you maybe had an off day and you gave up a couple runs early, you're like, our offense is going to score runs. I just got to hold them there. Versus, other teams you may have been on, depending if one lineup not as strong, you're kind of like, it's going to be tough for us to come back from. We never felt like we were out of the game, regardless of where the score was, and that's a kind of a nice place to be as a starting pitcher.
You run through, like you mentioned, a couple more playoff runs in Philly through that 2011 season. You end up retiring a few years later for a year, then come
Mm-hmm.
back in a totally different kind of realm, obviously with the Dodgers again, but as a reliever and turned into one of the more efficient ones in the sport for a couple of years, especially that 16 run back to the NLCS. What brought you back to the game in terms of wanting to get out and do this again for a full year, for a couple more seasons, and especially that 2016 run with the Dodgers? Did you feel like you were throwing the ball as well as you had at any point in your career in a really good team?
Definitely. Yeah, that there was the basically if I think of like 2013 to 2000, I guess through 2015 and that kind of 2 year, 3 year period. 13, I had struggled a lot. Come August ish, I'd lost my starting job kind of for the first time ever. Um, got put in the bullpen. Obviously, not the best feeling in the world for somebody. I'd been starting for 8 9 years at that point. Um, and then you're trying to mechanically. I was off, couldn't figure it out. Kind of grinded away at it, and just never could really seem to get there. Going in the off season, tried to make a big like physical change. Tried to do everything I could. I think I remember losing like 20 pounds in the off season. Just I'm gonna, I'm not gonna. This is a competitor. I'm not gonna let this happen again. I'm gonna get in the best shape I've ever been in. Really try to just wear this off season out. Came in just like I said, incredible shape, and it still just wasn't working. Couldn't figure it out. Wound up getting released at the end of spring. Um, then kind of being in a place of like I don't know what to do. Like maybe the doubt starts setting in. And it's real for everybody. I think at a certain point, regardless of how good you are or not. You're going to have that period, and that was probably the first time in my career I had real doubt. I obviously had periods where I wasn't as good as others, and maybe it struggled, but for that length of time and to put that hard of work in, I think it was a little bit soul crushing and kind of like I don't know what to do, and just it kind of felt like it's time to step away. Um, if I look back, do I regret it? I probably wish I wouldn't, but I think hindsight, it was probably wound up being a good thing to catch some space from the game because I had worked so hard and it wasn't working. Fast forward to that off season um, of 2014. Another pitcher by the name of Zach Duke moved into my neighborhood when I was living in Tennessee at the time. And, so he comes home for the off season, we start hanging out. It's time for him to start throwing again. And I was like, it wasn't a ton of other players around in the area we live. And I was like, oh, dude, I'll throw with you. It's no big deal. He was kind of gave me the, well, you're retired. And I was like, I can still throw. I was like, it's fine. I don't have to do all the work associated with it, all the bands and all the arm prep work and all this other stuff. I was like, well, we'll just find a field somewhere and throw. I was like, if not, I got access to a gym from when I played. I was like, we'll hop in there. I was like, I'll play catch with you whenever you want. I was like, then you can find somebody else to catch your bullpens. I said, I still don't mind playing catch. And the more we started throwing, the more I was like, wow, my arm started feeling really good. And he was like, it looks good. And I was like, ah. So I kind of started thinking to myself, like, I'm really enjoying, like, actually just throwing. Being around the at that point, what was the off season, the game more than I had in a couple of years, just through the struggles I had, and called a teammate of mine, Cole Hamels, and said, "Hey, mechanically, I've been off. I think I want to make a comeback. Do you ever see anybody? Who do you see? What do you recommend?" He said he had seen Tom House in the past, so he gave me his number. I reached out, hopped on a plane, went to Southern California for a week. Kind of first time I'd really worked with anybody outside of the major league game. Cleaned up a few things uh, that were kind of deficient in me throwing, and was lucky enough that the Royals took a flyer, and they were coming off of a World Series loss, um, and they wanted somebody who had. I think essentially they wanted backup for if any of their starters went down, they wanted somebody with experience and that had playoff run, and so that was kind of why they brought me in, and I kind of remember getting there, and they were like, "Whoa, you're throwing a lot better than we thought you were," and kind of gave them cleaned up a few things, haha. Go to AAA for a couple weeks, and threw well, get the call up, and that was kind of the run back at it. And for me, it was honestly one of the best times that I'd had in the big leagues, because it was something that was, I don't want to say taken away, because I was the one that stepped away, but to be able to come back and experience that again was obviously really special. Kind of you get a second life at it, and I really was able to enjoy it all.
Let's talk about your current chapter, your current project, and we have some quick stuff we'll get to before we let you go. But I guess the shift from athlete to the wine business isn't that rare, I guess, maybe in the baseball sense. I know, Drew Bledsoe playing quarterback for the Patriots years ago, he does similar stuff up in Washington now, but I'm sure that being out in the Bay Area, California, that kind of starts that, I'm assuming, in the early 2000s. But talk about the shift to this current project and being around wine and everything that kind of goes into a busy season in Napa, in one of the kind of cooler industries that you can find for a post-playing career.
Yeah, that chapter, like you said, it was partially coming up in the big leagues. When you travel, guys going to dinner together. When I got called up, being a 23, 24-year-old rookie, going to dinner, guys were ordering wine to have at the table, and kind of like, what is this? Oakland, short trip up to Napa. Made one trip up, and I guess we say I got bit by the bug, and I started collecting and started really enjoying coming out to Napa, sharing wine with others. And as transition goes, I think I realized playing career wasn't going to last forever, and it's like kind of had this foresight: what am I going to do when I'm done playing? So started thinking about wine, and I started sharing wine with teammates, and we kind of made tasting groups, and that became a fun thing for me to do, and a real time away from the field to be with teammates and kind of share. That was my thing. Some guys play video games together, they play cards or do whatever it is. That was one that I did with teammates that also had that enjoyed wine as well as and what I would do. And I kept making trips to Napa, after that first trip every off season. I would come here. It would kind of be some guys go to the beach or hunting retreats or whatever. This was mine, was coming to Napa, enjoying wine, enjoying everything that it has to offer. And then just, like I said, fortunate enough to find something that kind of fit what I want to do, wind up buying a vineyard. And couple years after that, moved out here, and then obviously retired and kind of jumped right into the wine world.
What do you enjoy? Like, what are some of the favorites that you have at the facility now? And I think of I'll ask for advice as I start to should try to get into this. This is we're talking very preliminary. Like, I drink like a glass of Sauvignon Blanc at like the holidays now. I know it seems like you guys are you're more of a red guy. How do you start to get into that, and what kind of should I be looking into when you start tastings here and there?
Oh, so I did both. So I do both right now. I make a Cabernet and I make a Chardonnay. Chardonnay's very new. I've been doing the Cab for about 10 years. Chardonnay only about a year. And it was the wine world for me. It was like a progression of any other. Coming to Napa, you go to certain places and you kind of learn, They always say the best way to learn wine is to drink it. It's not a bad way to go. So the more I drank and the more I came here, the more I learned what I like. And for me, that's what's important. I feel like the wine world sometimes it looks too serious, and it it's like this daunting of like, oh my gosh, I need to pull all these smells and flavors out of drinking wine, and it's got to be, this certain glass, or it's got to pair with this. It doesn't have to be that. And I think the wine world's kind of been pushed into this way of scaring people off from trying it. At the end of the day, for me, it's about, being with people you want to be around, meeting someone new, sharing something. For wine, it's, different than any other, beverage, and the fact that it has a year on it, that it takes you back to that time and that place, because every place speaks for itself on the kind of fruit that it gives, and they're all a little bit different. Same for the weather. Every year is a little bit different. So every vintage is different. Every spot is different. So it gives you this real snapshot of time and place, and you really get to talk about it. And then also, a lot of times when you share a bottle, people can remember either where they've tried it, or where they had it, or where they shared it with, or the conversation they had, or the restaurant, or whatever it may be. So it really kind of brings this whole sensory of memory back. And, I think that's what it should be about. And not this daunting, I don't understand and I don't know. At the end of the day, if you try it and you like it and you like to drink it, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what somebody else says, or a score that's attached, or this kind of perception of it needs to be this fancy thing. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And, that's kind of one of the things I'm not trying to change it, but, just that's my perception and kind of what I try to bring, when doing wine.
I feel more at ease considering, the only tasting I've ever done was like pre-Thanksgiving this year. I was driving home. My mom's like, I need a different palate to come in and try some stuff we might do at Thanksgiving. So come try this. And it's just it was like too many tables, too many flavors. I'm like, okay, let's go one at a time here. So I feel more at ease in kind of your approach. So I like that's how you're coming to wine now in kind of your business.
So I do it now, and a lot of times it's obviously when I did one, and now that I do the other, the two worlds for me wind up overlapping a lot. I do a lot of private wine dinners and things like that, to where a lot of times, I'll obviously tell the story of how I got into wine, and talk a little bit about wine and maybe this, but it eventually will turn into a lot of talk about about baseball, and essentially what we've done right here, and telling stories, and bringing back up old memories. And fortunately, I played for 7 teams, so I can cover quite a few people's team they follow, or what it may be. So that helps as well.
Let's get a few rapid fire before we get you out of here with Joe Blanton. There's a couple hard ones for you to choose from, I'm sure, but I think there might be one that stands out over another. What's the best rotation you think you were ever a part of?
2011. I wasn't a part of it very long. I unfortunately spent 1 year hurt in my career, and that was the one, and that was the one of the best rotations ever assembled. Wish I could have been a little bit part of it longer, but I think that definitely stands at the top. Like you said, there are some others. I mean, when I felt like I loved our rotation in Oakland when I came up with Rich Harden, Dan Herring. We had Zito, Chad Godin, myself as a starting, and then like you mentioned earlier, the second half of my career, I was a reliever. So I got to be a part of some bullpens that was actually just kind of switch up. An awesome time for me, for playing 9 or 10 years as a starter, to get to see that part of the game was super refreshing, and almost felt like a rookie again, which I'm sure doesn't happen to a lot of players at 10 years in the league, to feel like a rookie again, because it was like, I've had this certain structure in day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 pitch. And over again, to all of a sudden you're in the bullpen, you're going every day. There's a whole different routine. There's a whole different structure. I went from the Royals, where I was kind of the long guy, mop up innings, making sure that back end my job to make sure that the big 3-headed monster at the end didn't have to come into the game in any standpoint, and getting a few spot starts, to when I went to Pittsburgh. Was kind of got shifted into like this mid-inning role, kind of the bridge between the starters and the back end. That that was a great time as well. So that bullpen in Kansas City was incredible. I remember I'd go there, and Ryan Madsen was there, who I'd played with in Philly for a bit, and I was kind of asking him. He had been a bullpen guy. I was like, I've never been in the bullpen. What do I do? And da da da. And he goes, well, in this bullpen, you don't give up a run. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I remember every guy coming in, 0.9, 1.2 ER, and I was like, holy crap, they really don't give up runs. So that was a pretty incredible bullpen. When I was 2016 with the Dodgers, that was a special group. That was I think the first year, because like I said, Royals, I went to AAA, got called up, and then kind of I had like 4 or 5 spot starts, was kind of in the bullpen and back, and then got traded to Pittsburgh. So I was only with those parts of the year. So that was the first time I was in the bullpen, start to finish, didn't do anything else, wound up, working my way into the setup role that year. So that was actually probably one of the more special groups I had. I think we got bullpen of the year that year. We threw tons of innings that year. Our starting staff stayed hurt quite a bit that year, and we threw a lot of innings. And we were a really close-knit group, and that was a fun part, is being different from starting staffs to that one. That was a special group as well to be a part of.
Do you have a favorite road city to play in?
Favorite road city? I always enjoyed, off the top of my head, without thinking about it too much, Seattle. You can wake up in the day, and summertime weather's amazing. It's not too hot. It's nice out. You can cruise down to the wharf, go see what's going on. The field's gorgeous. It's just a little different with that retractable roof, and you can see out. I mean, there's others that I really like enjoying well. You go see the history in Boston and Chicago, and those have their own elements of on the field as well that they bring. I think they've been redone. When I was there, locker room's not so great. They were kind of dated back to when the stadium first opened, but the history of the stadium itself was special. Those are kind of ones that pop right off the top of my head, just for those reasons.
I think like every social media team around the clubhouse usually asks this question now, and it could be interesting for you because it could be baseball related, it could be wine related. Who do you think the most famous person in your phone is?
Oh.
Cole Hamels is a decent addition, like you talked about.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely
addition, but
I think, it's probably somebody from that time period if I really think about it. I'm trying to think about how it's somebody that I clearly hadn't kept in touch with that I maybe have him in my phone. Like I remember a couple times with Philly, you meeting people I got to hang out with. He's not as big now as he used to be. Larry, the cable guy. I feel like he's in there, but it's somebody I didn't keep in touch with. Same with Kenny Chesney. We used to go to all of his concerts, and a good friend of mine was in his band for a while. And so I would say that would be one too, but it's not somebody I keep in touch with. If I had to say somebody I keep in touch with, it's probably somebody I played with. Like you said, like Chase Utley or Cole Hamels or, one of those Hall of Fame type players.
I mean, hey, Chesney and Larry the Cable Guy certainly stand out. That's Toe Mater in your phone, if that's
but it's I don't count it because it's not somebody I have or would reach out to anytime soon. So
we got 2 more for you. Whether it was in your era or somebody now, who's a dream teammate you didn't get to play with that you wish you did?
Like a specific season of a team.
Or any player, whether it's somebody now, someone from your era, someone you didn't get to be a teammate with, a
specific player. Okay. Gosh, you could run through so many. I mean, if I'm being 100% honest, I got to do that. I'll answer it in 2 different ways. For one, I got to do it. So growing up, Frank Thomas was my favorite player. And actually, not long ago, pulled out a huge bin of cards with my son. And, he's starting to get into cards more. And I was like, oh, look at all these old cards I have. And there was all of these Frank Thomas cards in sleeves. And he's like, why do you have so many Frank Thomas? I was like, well, he's my favorite player. I got to play with him in Oakland. which I mentioned earlier. So if I looked at a kid who would I want to play with, it would be that would be a great answer for me. I think if I had to pick another one, maybe Nolan Ryan as being a pitcher. Just being able to watch him play watch him throw. Would have been pretty cool. I mean, I could probably sit and name a bunch. I mean, play with Babe Ruth, play with Shohei now. Obviously, if I talk about now, watching what he's doing, we brought him up earlier. It's incredible. It's a unicorn. I'll be the first one to admit I did not when he came in the league, and he came in the first year after I was done. And people would ask me what I thought. And I was like, well, I haven't seen him, but I don't think anybody thought that this would happen, especially on both sides. That would be somebody pretty incredible to watch day in and day out with the thing he's doing as well.
Last one for you, and now I'm thinking about what the realm of possibilities could be now that I'm thinking of Chesney and Larry the Cable Guy. Outside of baseball, if there's a celebrity, who do you think would be a great person to share a glass of wine with and have out in Napa for the day with you?
Oh my gosh, that is a tough question. That's a question I've never had before. I don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
To be fair, just a glass of wine by yourself and a Chesney album in the summer can't be a bad answer either.
That's not a bad thing either. To be honest, I'm lucky what I do now. I do get to travel a little bit for wine when I have time outside of coaching kids. But so I do get to see former teammates and other baseball players, in events. And if I'm being honest, for the guys that don't play and maybe aren't, if I say involved with the game, I mean at the big league level anymore, it is great to see other players again and share a glass of wine and just kind of relive the moments. I do enjoy getting to see guys that are coaching the youth level that played in the major leagues as well and talking to them. So that's always great. Like I said, that's and also live in a vacation spot, so do get reached out to every once in a while, and when people come into town, so I get to see them. I mean, for me, that's honestly what it's about more than sharing with a specific celebrity. I may not know. It's people that I can share moments with.
Joe, you've been awesome with your time. I appreciate you coming on the show and you kind of getting to share your story. Congrats on everything your baseball career has been to you. And I know October is kind of that crossing path of your two different careers that get busy with winemaking and playoff baseball. So should be another fun year ahead. But thanks so much for coming on and best of luck this summer with everything that goes into the project.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Perfect.